I had mentioned in the Western Peace tradition that we would be looking at each micro-lecture and aspect of the First Nations tradition, and I'd be using Pauline Johnson's Legends of Vancouver. The last time I looked at the first legend, or myth in that sense, what we call the Lions in Vancouver, or what the Chief Capilano called the Two Sisters, or the Chief's Daughters. This one I want to briefly touch on Siwash Rock. Anyone who's been in Stanley Park and has either bicycled around Stanley Park or walked around Stanley Park, you're inevitably going to see on the far side of Brockton Point this rock protruding out of nowhere, and you wonder where does this rock come from, and what does it mean? Now, of course, if a person's simply literal, and they just say, oh, it's a rock, okay, an interesting rock, and you bicycle on by, you walk on by, and left at that. But within the First Nations tradition, Siwash Rock has a story. It has a history, and it means something. It's a portal into an understanding the ethics of First Nations community. And so what is the story back of Siwash Rock, which is just around Brockton Point? So the story goes like this, and of course it's a part of the First Nations attempt to articulate who they are as a people, relationships, community. There's once a great chief. He was known as a great warrior. He was respected in his tribe as a man of great integrity. He held together his people together wisely and well. When the people were being attacked, he defended them. He knew how to protect his people against others. So he was honored deeply. He got to the point in his life, as he emerged, grew further into manhood, that he desired to be married. So he went up the coast, and he meets this woman from a northern band. He brings her down, and they become married. And inevitably, what occurs is their first a few years of marriage, they enjoy being together. They have a meaningful relationship that is enriched. It benefits the tribe. The broader bands prosper because of this union of man and woman from different bands. And inevitably, what happens? She gets pregnant and is about to have a child. And so the notion here that if you're about to have a child, and she senses she's about to have a child at a certain period in the morning, it's dawn. The sun has not yet risen, so it's dark, moving into dawn. But the idea you had to be clean. Before you had the children. And so the two of them get out into the water, and they start swimming to wash off any scent of what it meant to be human. And so their bodies would be lithe and clean and beautiful. So when she was about to give birth, the animals would come around. They would not be afraid of human scent that could threaten them in some ways, and there would be a cleanliness about them. So they swim. Their bodies, as I mentioned, they swim around Brockton, and they come to the area which would become Siwash Rock. They get out, they climb in, and they find a little patch of trees. And she goes into the trees, and he says, I have to clean myself even further, so you settle in and call me when you're about to have the child. So he goes out again and swims mightily and powerfully into churning up the water that as he swims back and forth, and he wants to be as clean as possible when the child comes out. So when the animals are there, when she's there, he's a clean father in that sense. There is no sweat, there is no dirt. His heart is clean, his body is clean, and he can be there for his wife. Now, as he's swimming up the Narrows, Bernard Inlet, but it's the Narrows, that small area of the Narrows, just where Stanley Park reaches across to the north shore, a big canoe is coming down, and there are the four. Often in Squamish legends, you have the ultimate being and the one who represents them. There's four in a canoe, and they're coming down the water, paddling a strong way, creating waves. And meanwhile, the chief is swimming, cleaning himself, and these four basically say, "Get out of our way! Get out of our way! We're you don't interfere with the gods." And the chief essentially says, well, I have to swim in this particular area and clean myself to get to my wife. And they say, how dare you defy the gods? And the great god and get in our way, because when the gods come, you do not interfere with their passage and their churning of the waters. And his position, well, is I have to be as clean as possible, and I'm not yet fully clean for my wife who's about to have a child. And their position was, well, how dare some chief challenge the representative of the gods who is coming down the waterway. And so you get this clash, in one sense, between an understanding of the gods and those who dare to interfere with him. So he continues to paddle to the point where he says, I must be fully clean, and if it means challenging the gods to get to my wife clean, I'll do it. And this becomes a confrontation for them. This person is defying us, but he's doing it in the name of integrity, in the name of purity, in the name of being with his wife with the delivery of the child. So they basically, after a consultation, the four of them, they said, okay, we will let you pass. And of course, what is happening here now, he hears the first cry of a child. The child has now been born. And so he's allowed, they let him pass in, but they basically say, as soon as you touch land, even though you have defied the gods, we admire your integrity to be clean, both for your wife and the wrong child when you get on there. But when you touch land, you will be turned into a rock to be a memory of what it means to be a clean father. And all of history will remember that rock that lets them know what should be the role of a man in relationship to his wife and child. And also what happened if you just go past that rock into the forest a bit, so the story goes. There is a bigger rock, which his wife was turned into a stone, and a very small rock in which the child was turned into a stone. And so these three rocks, Siwash Rock, the bigger rock in the forest, and the smaller one, are a memory in which the Chief Joe Capilano passed on to Pauline Johnson in stone of what it means to have integrity, even if it means to challenge an understanding of the gods and be a clean father for your wife and children. And that is left constantly in memoriam for them to see in terms of an ideal worth living for.